right, I want to give you guys an update to a story that we were covering here. This is about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the Democratic primaries. Mentioned that they were going to be doing a vote. The DNC is making all of these ridiculous rules in order to ensure that South Carolina is the first state for the primary, and which it has not been. It's because Joe Biden lost the first three, the caucus and the primaries. He lost Ohio, he lost New Hampshire, he lost Nevada, and it was embarrassing. And then he won South Carolina, and then the momentum picked up, and he ended up being the eventual Democratic nominee for president, and then the president of the United States, right? Well, they're wanting to prevent that embarrassment. So they're trying to skip those other states and make South Carolina first, the state that they know Joe Biden will win. They don't want others like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. winning and embarrassing old Joe. And so they've made these ridiculous rules. They threatened to make these ridiculous rules where if a candidate were to campaign in any of those states, well, the first rule was if those states, because those states said, we're not complying with this. New Hampshire in particular says, we're not complying with this. We're going to go first. This is in our state constitution. We're not going to go after South Carolina. That's not the way we do it. We've been doing this for 100 years. We've been going first, and we're going first this time, and nothing's going to stop us. So the DNC said, then we'll stop you. If you do this, you're going to lose half your delegates. And New Hampshire said, we don't care. And then they said, all right, fine. If you do this, then we're going to punish the candidates. We're going to tell the candidates that if their name shows up on your ballot in your primary, which their campaigns would have to then submit their names to be on the ballot, if those candidates show up on your ballot, then the candidates will lose all their delegates from the state that they win. They'll just be disqualified. Those delegates won't count. We'll throw them away. So they punished the candidates, and they said to the candidates that not only can your name not show up on that ballot, you're not allowed to campaign in those states until after the South Carolina primary. That's how we're going to do this. Really ridiculous rules, extremely limiting, not democratic at all for the Democratic Party that's, upholding democracy, right? So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wrote this letter. I'm going to share with you the letter, and then I'm going to tell you about the vote because they ended up voting today. We said that they were going to be doing the vote September 14th, and they did the vote, and I'm going to tell you the results of what they decided, because at that meeting, they were going to decide what their punishment for New Hampshire and any other state that does the primary before South Carolina, what that punishment was going to be. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was campaigning these last few days to bring awareness to that vote, to stop them from their undemocratic rule, a grip of the Democratic Party. And so this is a letter he wrote, and he released this yesterday before the vote. He says, I'm just going to read you a couple of paragraphs from it because he goes on and says, he starts off with, oh, Democrats, you're my friends, you're my family. And he says, he goes on about the Kennedy and Johnson administration, Voting Rights Act, history of Kennedys and all that. And then he says, unfortunately, in recent years, our party leaders have succumbed to the siren of control. They have compromised the defining democratic principle of one person, one vote through repeated interference in the primary elections. They have hijacked the party machinery and in recent years directed the power of censorship onto their political opponents, raising political victory onto the altar in place of honest democracy. In schoolrooms across the country, we teach our children that they have an inalienable right to self-determination, that no matter the town or creed or condition into which they were born, they each have an equal right to vote for the life and society of their choosing, and that someday they too will have the chance to put forth their own ideas and be elected or passed over based on the equal votes of diverse peers. Never in all of the civic lessons in all the schools in America did the teacher add, except for in states that the president lost in the previous election. Never in all the glorious retellings of our fight for universal voting rights has any teacher added, and the decision of the people should be overturned if it doesn't comply with the preference of the ruling elites. Yet this is exactly the new page in history that the DNC's pending rules propose, casting out New Hampshire's votes, limiting ballot access in Iowa, and deploying party operatives to water down the popular vote and ensure a controlled victory. Equally disheartening is the DNC's refusal to hold debates. The matter of precedent is spurious, as there has been no serious primary challenge to an incumbent in more than 40 years, although Al Gore, a sitting vice president, did debate challengers in 2000. Voters deserve and democracy requires a competitive process by which to determine nominees. It should be a party's voters who choose a candidate, not party insiders who anoint one. The DNC and the Joe Biden campaign have essentially merged into one unit financially and strategically, despite the promise of neutrality in its charter and bylaws. The DNC is not supposed to favor one candidate over another. It is supposed to oversee a fair democratic selection process and then support the candidate that its voters choose, which we know did not happen in the Bernie Sanders-Hillary Clinton primary. The DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign also merged and act as one unit, and Bernie Sanders was, treated extremely unfairly, and yet he still kowtowed in the end and endorsed Joe Biden. I'm really hoping that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just says, "Screw you guys, I'm out. I'm not endorsing anybody." When you operate like this, they don't deserve it. They don't deserve any of that. So he goes on to say, "I write to you now in the hope that you hold the engine of democracy as sacred as I do. I pray that at a time of public discontent, you cede more power to the public, not less, and thereby do right by yourselves, by the American people, and by the ideal of self-determination that inaugurated our great nation. In service of a more perfect union, Robert F. Kennedy Jr." It ain't happening, Bobby. I hate to break it to you, but the DNC is crooked. And they are they're not straightening out anytime soon. So you're just going to have to abandon the Democratic Party. And this is what I have tried to tell him. This is what other people have tried to tell him. And he's just going to have to come to that conclusion on his own. And it looks like he is. But he's just going to have to abandon the Democratic Party. They are not the Kennedy Democrats that he wants them to be. They are crooked. They have hijacked the primaries. They always have. They control everything. And they ensure that the candidate of their choosing gets to the position that they want. And who else knows what else they do? But one should be suspect if they're willing to basically hijack and rig their own primary. What else are they willing to hijack and rig, right? So the DNC did hold their meeting tonight about New Hampshire and New Hampshire's defiance. And New Hampshire is holding out. Everybody should just be looking at New Hampshire like, yeah, you guys are awesome. I mean, you guys will not back down, and that is great. New Hampshire is just, we are not backing down. Screw you, DNC. And that is really kind of fun to watch. So New Hampshire is not, they said, okay, New Hampshire, we're going to give you until September 14th, and we're holding a vote, and you better just back down. And New Hampshire said, nope, we're not. So tonight, the DNC held a vote, and they ultimately decided to extend the ultimatum to New Hampshire to October 14th. So they have 1 month to get into compliance or else. And they'd already said that to New Hampshire. New Hampshire said, we're not doing that. And so my guess is by October 14th, New Hampshire is still not going to back down. New Hampshire is holding their ground, and I love to see it, and I hope they continue to do it. But come October 14th, New Hampshire is still going to be staring them down. And this is just going to be a big staring contest. Who's going to flinch first? And the DNC, we'll see what they do. But that would be really, truly ripping democracy away from the people if they say, well, then we're not letting your votes count. There are now what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. referred to in his letter as like the swarm of state operatives that are going to go in there in order to, what did they say that they were, he mentioned that they were going to be putting in, like swarming with party insiders. And that is what they plan to do. So there's this rally now because Joe Biden, because of the DNC's rules that they're trying to strong arm New Hampshire. They're saying if your name shows up on the ballot, then you're not going to get votes. You're disqualified. You're not going to get those delegates, all of these things, right? So New Hampshire's not backing down. Because of that, there is a real embarrassment still for the DNC when Joe Biden's name doesn't appear on the ballot. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s name does, and Marianne Williamson's does, and one of those two win, likely Bobby Kennedy, and Kennedy wins New Hampshire. That would be embarrassing for the Biden campaign, and that's what they're trying to avoid. So what they're doing now is they're trying to swarm in a bunch of insiders to write in Joe Biden's name. His name can't appear on the ballot, but they want him to, they're going to swarm in with write-ins and try to get Joe Biden a win as a write-in in order to still secure him a win in New Hampshire. Why not just hold a primary? Just hold a primary. Why not hold some debates? and hold a primary? Why go through all of this circus and this insanity in order to just get your guy the win and to not embarrass him when all you're doing is just embarrassing yourself and you're still embarrassing him? He should be embarrassed, and he should be, as the leader of the Democratic Party right now, he should be demanding democracy. They're demanding that, saying Republicans are ripping it away, and yet here they are doing everything they can to thwart democracy amongst Democrats. It's insane. But lately, Democrats have believed a lot of insanity. So, you tell them you tell them facts, scientific facts, and they sit there and look you in the face and they tell you, you're a conspiracy theorist. I am the science. And they go about their way believing in faith-based, non-science nonsense. Same thing with wars. You tell them about wars and how things are going to be, the outcome, the truth of the outcome, and they still look at you with eyes glazed over and they think that you're the crazy one. And when you say to them, your party is no longer democratic, even though you're sitting there claiming that you're fighting for democracy, their eyes glaze over and they say, no, demagogues in the Republican Party are going to be taking over, and they're the ones who are hijacking democracy. It's them, not us, like zombies. That's who I feel like we're dealing with. If you value your online privacy, let me tell you guys about this VPN company that I've used for many years. It is called Private Internet Access. And if you aren't familiar, a VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. It's a way for you to keep your internet activities private. And what it does is connect your computer with a remote server, which then encrypts your personal data, masks your IP address, and lets you get around website blocks and firewalls on the internet. Also, you can change your location when using a VPN, which is how I really like to use it, because we all know that the internet is biased in the United States. When you do a search, you get biased results. So what I like to do is I place myself in different countries when I'm researching certain events like wars, in particular foreign policy, or just getting a take on what is happening in other countries. I'll put myself in other countries and then do the search from those countries as if I'm there, and I will get a whole different group of search results. You get their local news sources, and then what I do is translate those local news sources, and that's how I get a lot of my information. So there's a lot of ways to use a VPN, but the biggest way I think most people is you just don't want companies looking over your shoulder, manipulating you with their search results or profiting off of your data. So check out Private Internet Access, the world's most transparent VPN provider with over 30 million downloads. This is the perfect software for staying private online by hiding your IP address and encrypting your internet connection. And it's really easy to use. Just download the app, and with one subscription, you can actually protect an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. And like I said, I've been using this particular provider for many years because it's the easiest to use, it's very reliable, and quite honest, it was the cheapest. I've been using it, like I said, for years. So if you want to enjoy all the benefits of Private Internet Access, now is the time to subscribe. Just head to piavpn.com/Kim. You're going to get 83% off, and that's just $2.03 a month. Plus, you're going to get 4 extra months completely free, but you got to go to piavpn.com/Kim for a truly private digital life.